It's 1 a.m., normal business hours for a chronic insomniac. I'm trying to write a grant or respond to emails or write back to family and friends I've neglected, but I have a problem. My right and dominant arm is being slowly, spasmodically humped by my cat Floki. And we both need him to nut so we can get on with our lives. Floki is one of two boys I adopted from a friend who discovered a litter of kittens behind the laundry in her complex in Tijuana. They were healthy but small, and I gave them strong Viking names in the hopes that they would grow to resemble them, Ragnar and Floki. Ragnar has since cost me $14,000 in medical bills. Between just two incidents by the time he turned 4. The first happened when he escaped out a bathroom window and tore his toe off during the fall. The second occurred when a crystal formed in his dick. Not the kind of crystal that a girl who renames herself Cricket tells you will ward off bad energy. No, quite the opposite. Each time at the emergency vet, I was presented with a piece of paper that asked, do you want us to kill your friend, or will you pay whatever we decide it costs to keep him alive? I've paid it both times because I am not a monster, and I decided I could afford it. What's taking a vacation or owning a pair of boots that aren't old enough to vote compared to preserving the life of a perfect, if accident-prone child of God? He has me over a barrel. I'd fight harder to keep Ragnar's survival more than I would most humans I know. Ragnar is my sock monkey. He's Mr. Waffles. He's the boy who lived. I'm 44 and live alone with 2 cats. If they don't make it, the world will need to put me down, humanely or otherwise. I let them both out to play in the backyard regularly, encased in harnesses, on leashes. Don't come at me, Californians. Ragnar sits in the shade as long as I will let him, talking to the birds, and complains when I lift him up and out of the leaves he is so content to lay in. He is too good for this world, which is why I need him so badly to live. His brother Floki is slightly less domesticated, but far more robust. I once thought he was terrified of humans, but I've learned he is braver in the company of women. Both of my boys prefer the company of women. I prefer the company of women. We all share a sensibility that we can never discuss, but make the best of it together. Floki never stops moving, hunting as his default. He has traumatized dozens of lizards I've had to free from his tiny jaws, and twice now kicked, even in the exhausting, loud sun, managed to root out and kill a fat rat. He kicked their bodies around like soccer balls until he cried from disappointment that the life he took could no longer play with him. Our family unit was almost perfectly civilized, a home a guest could visit at any hour, except now, Floki has to nut. The finer points of veterinarian science elude me, but it's amazing what they can do now for boy cats. They get to keep their furry little balls when they're taken in to get fixed now. The doctor just snips the part that counts, which is more humane and leaves an adorable aesthetic, like a pair of little fuzzy dice that is completely normal and not weird at all to give a little poke. But, for better or worse, sometimes the cat remembers what they were actually meant for. And so Floki's taken to fucking my arm. Rarely to completion, maybe once. I only think so because of the smell that suddenly filled my nostrils before he ran away in shame. Relatable. It was like some foreign fruit had been cracked open, simultaneously rotten but alarmingly fresh. I took a shower, but I couldn't rise to the level of outrage because I too have come on another person. And I was so grateful they were polite about it. All men hope their jizz will earn a Michelin star in the reviews, but deep down we all know we're just shooting for fine. The smell of mine has a bleach element sometimes, and I consider that a win. At least it advertises cleanliness. I've never smelled anyone else's because as much fun as men can be to drink with, they always strike me as something requiring to be managed, but never trusted, and therefore impossible for me to sexualize. From the overt schoolyard bullies fought off and shot to the never quite kind bonding practiced by the adults of the species, I always feel like I have to have a plan in the back of my head to kill my male friends if it ever comes to it, and it turns out that's just not one of my kinks. A few bad apples have not ruined me to fruit, but I've learned to ask about the conditions that they were grown in. Was their farmer a nice lesbian couple, or was it a chemical plant? Are they happy being an apple, or do they act more like a hand grenade? Was a Catholic church even remotely visible from their backyard? Or, to be more plain, what was their relation with their dad like, and do I remind them of him? I get in a lot of fights because I'm dad-coded. Maybe I've been fucked because of it too, but nobody ever had the decency to tell me. It's a vetting process born from the few occasions I found myself treated like prey. And each time it's happened, I've been caught off guard to the point where my reaction was dulled by shock. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall. I've never been accused of being skinny. I'm covered in tattoos, and I am not slow to anger. There, I exhibit several human red flag equivalents to what brightly colored frogs and noisy snakes bring to the table. I can look scary. I know so because women have told me. Surely there have got to be softer targets out there. But there are no apex predators among humans, just opportunities. The first time I learned this as an adult, I was broke after college, campaigning for John Kerry in a miserable Idaho winter. And I met another volunteer, a one-armed Jesuit, who offered me a job in New York that came with an apartment. This was an unfathomable boon to my circumstances, a holy, seemingly, degree of kindness. And to his credit, I got to enjoy it unmolested for a full 6 months, before he started to try to slip his hand into the back of my pants. The first few times it happens, I shrugged it out, put a little distance between us, but as it continued in full view of the other staff, I realized everyone was used to this part of the deal except me. After finding his internet history full of rent boy websites, I ghosted the job for a much less stressful career with the United Nations as a disaster response officer in Darfur. I spent one of my first nights in country drinking my eyes out with an Army helicopter pilot who warned me about all the ways I might die out there, which included just going on a walk back to my assigned compound that night. Whatever lay out in the darkness beyond our wire was impossible to know. I could catch a bullet just outside the front door, he said, so I'd better rack with him. I was convinced, until he asked me to jerk him off when we got back to his room. I declined, he passed out, but I never went to sleep. When these periods of my life ended, I entered the dad-coded indoor phase I currently occupy, filled with little cats I make up different nicknames for to reflect their antics, like Cinnamon Bun and Beef, and now Horn Dog. But even Ragnar and Floki grew out of their kittenhood and stopped cuddling one another for attention, peacocking for space and attention. They are never too rough about it, just spats of spanking and chasing one another when they're bored, but it's enough to make me worry that they need a calming influence in their lives, one that possibly only a woman can bring, because I've changed for the worse. When Ragnar escaped through my bathroom window and immediately tore his toe off, I waited for him to be released from the veterinarian at a pride party thrown by an acquaintance. A man who decided that that was the night to try to put his hand down my jeans with a sweaty, drunk, slobbering confidence that turned me violent, and I caused a scene, but it made him afraid. After my Marine veteran friend had a psychotic break, sucker punched me, slammed my head into the bricks of my yard, and put me in the hospital, I started carrying weapons. There isn't a crevice in my house, here or on my person, that I couldn't pull something sharp from now. And that comforts me, excites me even, makes me almost want the next misbehavior to happen just to witness a different outcome. I've had to question if I do things that could help that along. All the proof I need to believe in the biological drive to reproduce is the fact that women still fuck men, but I know that's pandering. The language of violence is not gendered. I've seen the pupils of my lovers dilate and their moans amplify when my hand finds their throat. There were perks I had been missing out on by not participating in the cycle. Everything is about sex, except sex, because sex is about power. Oh, how droll. Can't we just be content with nice things and consensual missionary? Even Floki, the blue-eyed samurai himself, is not immune. Why can't you be more like your brother? I ask him, looking pointedly at Ragnar, who sits politely in a colder corner of the room, waiting his turn that would never come if I didn't intervene. I don't stop Floki, though. I study him. I see how intent he is, how violently he concentrates, how disappointed he often is with the outcome. I let him because I feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for all of these problem men. Their obsession with a singular outcome is so pathetic. Their flushed faces and increased heart rate so cartoonish, yet so common, so universally witnessed. It begs the question if they've evolved free will. It never ends well for anyone. At least temporary inconveniences befall them. I wish them all far worse. Floki and I are cool because he is blameless. He is a 4-year-old snowshoe I plucked from behind a washer and dryer when he was a baby. He just wants to feel good like everyone else. And I have the luxury of controlling his damage, swatting him off without a second thought. I can do this because I am enormously, incomprehensibly larger than he is, and he has no real power. Floki has no money, no religious affiliations, no fervent nationalist ideologues to demand immunity for his war crimes, and no shared friends on Instagram. He has no Instagram. If I decide his life is worth nothing, he would die, and no real harm would befall me. I would be held to no human standard. Sometimes I replace him on my couch with Ragnar, encouraging him to take up more space, assert himself, let kindness win. But we don't speak the same language. And there are no words that override nature anyway. Ragnar always abdicates to his brother in time. He cannot match the hardness of the world. He never has. His qualities are numerous and wonderful, but they become so tragic if he is not a survivor. I think about killing some of the men who have been larger and more powerful than me, whether in frame or power. I could. There is no expiration date on revenge, and there are no apex predators among humans, just intention and resources. And I could probably get away with it if I wasn't choosing to talk about it. Even so, who would miss them? They have no allies. The nature of their violence causes them to hunt alone. And I hope they think about that, but I doubt they do. Predators only remember what they think they need to. They never think about the people who never forget. Someone should make them. Fear is a language that all mammals speak. Floki always returns to my lap a few hours after test firing his empty balls. He stretches across my lap and nibbles my fingers like he did with the bottle I fed him with as a kitten. Boys just mature so much slower. He knows not what he does, so I pet him until he falls asleep with one hand, and I fondle the hatchet under the couch cushion with the other. And I listen for anything out of the ordinary, anything but purring, and I wait. Because I will raise good boys. Thank you.